All right, hello and welcome to live Startup Business Q&A. And what we're doing is a very interesting one this week, focusing on how to convert leads. So I think it's an exciting one because we put out a poll this weekend on, what do you want to talk about as a topic? And this was, I think it was 2/3 of the votes was on converting leads. It's really exciting to do that. Thank you everyone for joining us on the replay if you are, or if you're watching live. If you are watching live, could you pop in hashtag Team Live so we know you're watching. And I'm really excited to have people that have asking so many questions. It's rare that we get this many. I had to make it extra small with with all of the questions I got on the paper. Hi to everyone watching on the podcast or listening on the podcast even. Hi everyone on YouTube, Instagram and Facebook as always. And I think we'll get started with a bit of background, because I think that what I wanted to do was give you a sense of who I am, because some people watch this each week, but also some people watch and have no idea who I am. So it's a bit of background. So I have been working in sales in various forms, in marketing, in UX, also running sales teams as well for the past 16 years or so. So it's really nice to be able to operate in this kind of space and talk about this, have this kind of subject in mind. And really what we're looking at is me coaching sales teams and corporates. That's what I tend to do most of my working day. And I spend a lot of time with people, strategizing with them on how to move, often high ticket sales, but also sometimes the small ones, from conceptual or nebulous conversations into a hard close where there's actual conversion to money, for instance. So if you're watching live, tell us where you're watching from, or put in hashtag Team Replay or hashtag Team Live. I'm always like rambling a little bit because I'm setting up three cameras at the moment, and it will soon be 4, because we will soon have LinkedIn Live as well. So very excited about that. Now, there was going to be an announcement for the winner of a competition we've got in the Entrepreneur Business Group. So 2 announcements today. And the first, firstly, the winner I will announce after this in the group. So if you're in the Entrepreneur Business Group, you can join us there on Facebook, and I will announce the winner directly there, just to keep your suspense a bit longer. In addition to that, we have a date. As you know, there's the Entrepreneur Business Live events each month in London. Next month, we've got Toronto on the 27th with Belinda, with Cher and with Katya. In April, we've got Barcelona. I'll be there with Dot Lung and with Daria as well. I'm very excited to have her on board. But we've also, in May, we're going to have New York with Max Mirho hosting, and possibly Mark Mitri. It looks like he might be. But also Melbourne. Those watching from Melbourne, hopefully you'll be able to give us a thumbs up for this. The 21st of May will be Melbourne, Australia, with Tima Elhaj, also Diana Nguyen, and also Christina Murray as well. So thanks very much for everyone supporting that. I'm very excited that we finally have a date for it. So more information on that soon. Those just joining, just to let you know, the announcement from the Entrepreneur Business Group on Facebook, the winner of the book Contagious, is it up there? It's up there somewhere, by Jonah Berger, will be announced after this in the Entrepreneur Business Group on Facebook. But let's get into this. We've got a lot of questions to cover on converting your leads. So if you want to ask me a question, then please do pop it in the comments and we'll take it from there. So first up, we've got James Perry, who's asked, what do you say on a discovery call, Richard? For instance, I give my prospects a free 15 minutes call for an initial discussion. I paint the picture, explain how I solve their pain points, even explain the return on investment they get from me regarding career earnings for them post my coaching. I have a conversion rate of approximately 40%. I'm in the process of developing a sales script for these calls. Any further tips? Very interesting, because my consulting calls in that respect, the discovery calls are often a little bit longer than that. And I find if someone's come to me cold, what I like to do is, ahead of the discovery call, I will send them an email with some questions to answer. Firstly, it gives me a bit of a feel for them when I get these answers ahead of the call, James. But in addition, those questions serve to prime the person who's going to do the call. Let's be clear. What it does is it helps that person feel good about the call they're about to have. It validates that I'm strong in my space. I might, there has been some emails I've sent in the past which is give us your objective, what's the outcome, and so on. But in addition, there's things like watch this video, which is just a bit of a vibe about me. It gives them a sense of who I am and how it feels to kind of engage with me, and might be giving them some value as well. What I want going into a discovery call is to warm that person up first. Ideally, sure, it's nice when someone comes in cold, but even part of your mechanism, if cold traffic converts to a discovery call with you, it is everything to make sure that you can warm them up. Maybe slot in an email as part of your thank you once they've scheduled a call, so that they are doing a little bit of work to feel good about you before you get on the call. That priming is everything, because then when they get onto the call, they're feeling awesome about being with you. That's so crucial, because now what we have is someone who is leaning in and receptive as we move into the call. As for 15 minutes, what you've written here is you give a free 15 minutes call for initial discussion. I paint the picture, explain how I solve their pain points, even explain the return on investment they get from me. My first 10 minutes or so is pretty much saying nothing. On the discovery call, I will usually lead by saying, thanks so much and everything, but I will start with, so give me a feel of you so far. Like, how have you got to here? What's been your trajectory to get to this point? Okay. When we do this, what happens is we relax the prospect. We relax the person we're speaking to. And what they can do is start giving us a sense of who they are. They will calm down. But what we're doing is we're actually feeding our subconscious about the person we were speaking to. Because as you know, if you know someone well, you know how to react around them. Think about your close friends or family. You speak to certain people in different ways, right? You interact with them in different ways because of the kind of personality they are. You want to fuel your subconscious with the type of person you're engaged with. The easiest way to do that, you don't have to think about it too much. The easiest way to do it is just get them to chat a bit. So let them talk a bit. And I often will say, let's hear a bit about you, how you got to where you are, then a bit about your business, and then we'll see how we can fit together. I want to keep my powder dry, and a conversion rate of 40% is pretty good. But I would say that when I get onto a call with someone, I tend to get on the call when I am basically certain that's going to be a deal. And what I'm doing is, even if it's with cold traffic, I set them up with some things and pointers they need to be doing ahead of the call to prime them. And then all of that is all about making them feel comfortable, so that I can then move them to a place where it's logical to align what they're after with the solution I can provide. So it's much more the reverse of what you've suggested here. And it does take a bit longer than half an hour, but no one has a problem with indulging like that when you're talking about themselves, when they're talking about themselves. So that tends to work very well for me. Hopefully that helps. But I think that's really crucial. Another question here from Daniel Nunez, and it says, my conversion question relates to price negotiations. I've really got good at generating and initiating relationships and attracting potential clients. How do we balance knowing and asking for our worth versus settling for what the client is projecting? Well, one thing, I think I understand the question here, Daniel. Always what I would do is share your worth first. Okay. I see this a lot in selling, where a lot of the sales execs I work with in the city, they'll say, I just know, Richard, that they're a small company, or I just know they haven't got much budget, and things like that. What we still need to be doing is saying to ourselves, remember that we have our own worth and we have our own value that we're offering. With that in mind, what you need to be trying to do is share how good you are. If you're selling Ferraris for $100,000 each, you don't lower the price because the person you're selling to perhaps hasn't got quite as much money. No, it's a $100,000 car. That's that. It doesn't mean you're stubborn with your price, but it means you firstly should position the high value or premium product you have with that person. So what I'm saying, just to be practical, is I would be going to them saying, here's what I do, once we've had your discussion and so on, and here's what it's worth, here's the price of it. But prior to that, I would always be asking a trial closing question, simply asking, what do you think? Do you feel in principle, before I give any prices or anything, do you feel in principle this is something that you benefit from? And, you want that person saying, yes, in principle I do, because now notionally that person wants what you have to offer. Then when you offer them the price, they're hearing the price from you, but they've also just heard themselves, their most persuasive voice, have heard themselves say out loud, yes, I'd like your service. And now they're wanting it, even if the price is high. Okay. So I would always do that. I wouldn't lower my price point, for instance, or lower the proposition on the basis that I feel that they won't be able to handle it or will be too much for them. I need to make the statement first of really what people feel about my service. You know, people are paying this because this is what I'm offering, and this is because I'm good. But then you move into the discussion based on saying, do you know what? Right now, I've got a bit of a problem with it. Right now, it's a bit too much for me. Right now, I think it's too expensive for my, for what I have. If that's the case, fine. Then fine. All you need to do is say, right, well, what I need to do instead is now work through a process of understanding what value they liked, what value they thought was valuable, and then from there, tease out what kind of price point may be necessary. But I suppose the short version of this, Daniel, is always go in at the price point that you have in mind for you, because that's what your product is worth. Then work your way down from there. So hopefully that makes sense. So you have to excuse me, Dan, I'm feeling a little off color because I've been really quite ill, or feeling quite ill over the weekend. My daughter's been ill as well. So I'm not struggling, but we're feeling a little bit low key by comparison to usual. But it's very kind of you to still join us all. Let's jump into another question here from Michael Getty. Thanks for this, Michael. Does the approach to converting a lead have a core strategy that applies to all leads, or does it change from one lead to the other? I understand that you need to do some things differently based on the personality you're dealing with, but does each process lead from a core system? So what you're looking for is, is there a way that is standard or formulated that is for all people that you're trying to close? Loosely, yes. And I think what it is to, because there's a lot of intuition, a lot of techniques you can use that for different people, different kind of personality types. But just because of time, I think the big thing to think about is when you are asking for the deal, if you like, you need to ensure that they are comfortable and feeling good first. There is a school of thought in selling and closing and working with deals that is that you should start by just asking for the deal anyway, even if someone's not interested, because it throws up objections that you can then handle. I disagree with this to a degree. The reason why is because if someone likes what you do and you just ask for the deal and they say, yeah, happy days, but if someone clearly hasn't got a sense of like why you'd be helping them, it's absurd to ask for the deal, even if it does throw up any problems, as in objections you can handle, because what you're doing is you're showing that you're unaware of where the conversation really is. Do you see what I mean? You wouldn't ask someone out on a date if they don't like you visibly. If they're clearly giving you the hard shoulder, you don't ask them on a date. You need to work harder to earn the position where you can ask, right? It's precisely the same here. If someone's like, oh, I don't know, this isn't really still very good, trust your gut even. It really is important. What you need to be thinking is, this person isn't sold enough. If they were a bit more sold, then I could move to what do you think now? Should we move ahead or should we discuss what it might look like to work together? But you've got to earn that first. And so if it feels like, well, if it's meant to be the point in your script or process where you normally ask for something or close someone, I'd suggest you check in with yourself. Does it feel right? Are we getting what's called a cue or a compliment, or someone saying, do you know what? Yeah, that could feel really good. Just that general vibe that it's a good time to engage with you. If it is the case, well, then you can ask. If it's not, you need to earn it a bit more. And that's the way I would look at it. Okay. So you need to be sensed, are they ready to be closed? Are they ready to be converted? I think if you're looking at something automated like a funnel, for instance, we need to be thinking, right, well, how is my retargeting looking? Whoever goes to this particular page on my landing site or whatever, what happens to them? If they do nothing, what do we do there? Some people need more warming up than others. It's just the reason why I'm articulating it like this, Michael, is that not everyone can be sold to in the same way. Of course, some people are naturally the procrastinating type. In fact, they are often like that because they've been burnt burnt in the past, or maybe there's some conditioning they've had. Sometimes like 20, 30 years of being risk averse. And so you're not going to kind of crack that right away. But a really good question, that one. There's another one here from Daniel Nunes I want to tackle. How do you keep from being lowballed? So the term lowballed means that someone's like giving you an offer for your services, and it's, you know, if I have $1,000 price point, they go, I'll give you $200 for it. They're lowballing me. Some people use it as a negotiating technique. A good buying technique, rather than selling, but a good buying technique is to lower the aspirations. Is a kind of a nasty way of buying in a way. But if you lower the aspirations of the salesperson, it means they will be more likely to give up more concessions, because of course they want the sale, and you're making them feel like there's not much chance of it. And only very good salespeople kind of hold their ground in those situations. And I think lowballing you with a seasoned buyer can be a technique that they're using as sport, or because they know what they're doing. But typically those that lowball you are representing someone who isn't very interested, or has not got the kind of value you'd be after. There's a couple of things you can do here, but essentially you've got to understand that, typically speaking, if someone's lowballing you, it's because there's no differentiation between your service or offering and someone else's. Okay, or in fact, not just yours and a competitor's, but yours and doing nothing. You know, if it's like, seems like a bit of work here working with you, and I'm not really feeling like I'm getting that much more in return. You know, if it doesn't really solve a pain point or give them a massive or feeling of massive boost in success, a lot of people are like, I can't be bothered really, and so they're like, you know what, I'll give this a punt for a couple of $100, but otherwise I'm not going to meet your $1,000 price point. Again, it just represents a lack of feeling of a great value there. So what we need to be doing is saying to ourselves, what's going on? We're actually getting very low return from kind of the positive feedback. So I need to be asking basically things like, you know, what do you think? Or it feels like you're not really that interested. Where did I drop the ball? Just be real. Sometimes being candid is a really good idea. That's if that happens. But how do you keep from being lowballed? What Daniel's saying is the way he's worded the question is actually preemptive. So there is a technique, which is a really good one, I think, which is that you give 3 prices. One is super high, like 5 times more than you would normally charge, and you drop it into conversation. It's a really nice technique. What you do is you say, you know, all you need is one person who said to you, I love this is the best thing ever, you should be charging 10 times or whatever. You say, it's funny, you know, there's someone recently who's told me that this service is actually worth 20 grand or something instead of the, you know, the price we have. But don't worry, it's not that, it's okay. You're just dropping a seed or a thought into their head of, actually there's someone out there who thinks it's worth 20,000. They now have that price in their mind momentarily, but they know it isn't 20,000. That's the outrageous price. So in their head, they're like, well, at least it's not that. It must be like single digit thousands at least. But they're normally thinking $200. Then later on, what you can do is you can talk about how the price might be going up soon if you want to, because it probably will eventually. You say, you know, there's actually going to be a higher price point quite soon, which is going to be in the region of $10,000 for our product. And then when you get given the price of, say, 6,000, these are the price points I've given a client recently we've worked with on pricing. But the actual good news is the price is actually 6,000. They've been conditioned that it was 20 for one guy who thought it was amazing. It's going to be moving up soon to 10, but actually it's only 6. Now 6 doesn't feel like much because it's positioned with the backdrop of those other 2 prices. So that's a good way of doing it. But look, Daniel, it's basically this thing of, if someone's not sold on your value enough, they're going to lowball you. Or they are playing games because there's not enough respect. This is something that people need to be aware of. If you're not getting strong enough respect from someone, so if you aren't positioned, this is in your marketing, if you're not positioned as an authority at what you're doing, for instance, what's going to happen is someone thinks you're maybe a little bit lower level than you actually are. That respect is missing, and therefore they'll think you're not really worth much. There's a reason why some people charge an absolute fortune for what seems like a relatively simple thing. So for instance, some people will charge $5,000 for a speaking gig, like, you know, to speak for half an hour, for instance. And for others, like, how the hell? But it's because of their positioning. It's often not what they're saying. What they're saying is often kind of basic, but they're positioned as an authority, so people are really bought into them. Now, what that means is if your positioning is good and your marketing is good, then reputation precedes. People lowball you less. So who are you hanging out with? Who are you being seen with? Who are you collaborating with? Who do you connect with? Who's in your network? Who shows up for you? Things like that. If they're strong people, what happens is that you get positioned as strong as well. What are you doing? I mean, is your service or product something that appears premium? Are you putting out shoddy looking marketing? Does your website look budget? Because if you look amateur, and whether you like it or not, this is how humans are, sorry. if you look amateur, you are amateur. It doesn't matter how great you are, okay? And that's because humans subconsciously judge first. And so what happens is people often feel you can't be that good. If I've got a really bad reputation and I'm a nobody, then someone will speak to me no matter how good the advice, they probably tend to feel I'm not worth much. Whereas if I'm good and there's evidence behind it and there's strong weight of authority of people advocating for me, you tend to get, yeah, sure, no problem. When you give it a higher premium price point, it works. I've proven it myself. So it's very much how I do it. It's a really important point. So you keep from getting lowballed by having respect to start with, but also positioning high value in front of someone. Remember as well that value is both practical, what you're offering, but also emotional, how you feel to that person as well. If they think they're in front of greatness when they speak to you, your price point won't matter as much. If they don't really get you much, if you're making mistakes all the time, if you don't seem to be aware of what's going on, if you're not listening properly, if you're not showing them respect, if you're interrupting, stuff like that, all these things can compound against you and then end up in a place where it's like, I don't really want to work with you. And now your price seems too expensive because of an emotional vibe as well. So it's an important way to look at it. We're covering today closing or converting leads. So any questions on that, let me know. Thank you everyone jumping in on Instagram. So Justin, NA Brinker, Wolfgangs, I love the name, RX Lexeb, NATO B90, Fun Jesse, NSDQ Mike, and so on to many of you. And thanks everyone for joining us. Hi David Potts on Facebook, Kurt Leaders here. Being a messenger, I'll get to a question in a minute. Carolina Mankowski as well. We need to catch up for our phone call. William, nice to see you here too. Christine, Jansen, Karen, Deuce, Rashid, Jonathan, Bonzo, Benu, and Rich, all of you joining. Thanks so much. Any questions on closing leads or converting leads, let me know. Thanks also those watching on YouTube and listening on the podcast. Let's just a notice as well about the Zach Houston, hello, also on Instagram. Notice that on the Entrepreneur Business Group, straight after this, I will be going live to share the winner of the weekend's competition or Friday's competition on whoever had the best win. You're going to win a new copy, not signed or anything, but a copy of Contagious by Jonah Berger. And Bina, since you're here, let's answer your question. How do you use LinkedIn as a platform for lead generation? Ideas other than doing tons of inbound marketing? Sure. So the inbound marketing approach, just to be clear for people who don't know, is putting out great content so that people come into orbit around you and say, hey, this guy's really good. I see you more and more, get comfortable with you, check you out because people are curious, and end up selling themselves because they think you're, like it's mentioned on the last question, there's a perception that you're good, right? So they like what you do, then actually, hang on, this guy does this thing, and then they sell themselves on it. This literally happened to me on Saturday. There's someone I've known for probably 6 to 8 months. Followed my content lots. We've engaged plenty in the past, just DMs and that, just giving them value. And then on Saturday, I saw new sign up for your course. So someone had bought my course, they'd gone to LinkedIn, checked out the profile, gone to the website, bought a course, all on their own back. And that it was that person I'd known who converted themselves. That's what it was. And one thing I would suggest is that aside from what I've just described, using DMs and converting conversations on LinkedIn, just like I did with Facebook, is a really good approach. it works. It really does. And you know, when I was doing this with Facebook 6 years ago now, I would go into a group that was relevant. I would then see who was active, and I would I would show up on posts and like meaningful comments, and then I would connect with someone who'd been engaging there because I'd become familiar to them by writing things, and I would then write them a message. Hey, how's it going? We're both in the same group, and I purely would just have a chat. That's it. And I would do that 20 times a day. I did it for about a month or so, and it was a lot of work, but 20 times a day. And those were people that I warmed up just by being a good guy and getting social. Out of every 20, there might have been 2 or 3 where we got onto talking shop. We talked about the work we did, and for maybe one of those 3, we were talking about things, and I would give a bit of advice because actually this person clearly maybe didn't know as much as me, and I would give them a bit of advice or a few pointers, and then I get the cue, which was a compliment. Hey, Richard, this is amazing. I never looked at it this way. This is really valuable. And that's my point where I'd say, well, I know I can help in this area. Why don't we hop on a call and discuss this further? You only need a few of those in a month, and then suddenly you've got yourself a consulting gigs. And that's how I built that many years back. And I think that is how I use as a platform for lead generation. One thing I would certainly be saying is make sure that you're looking at leads or people who have mutual connections. It really makes it feel a little warmer for them. Everyone feels a little uneasy, let's say. They don't like it, but they feel a little uneasy when there's a third connection. It feels like, well, what's going on here? But when there's a load of mutual connections, you've got a nice talking point. Hi, I had one the other day. It's like, we've got over 1,000 mutual connections. I only have like 6,500 on LinkedIn anyway. We've got over 1,000 mutual connections. Of course we need to connect. And that was kind of our opener. And work the volume, because the thing is, if you do 20 of those conversations, even if 19 turn into nothing, they've still turned into new connections that you've warmed up. And it might be that someone doesn't convert right away, but what happens is maybe 4 months later, 8 months later, 2 years later, those people turn into deals, or they just advocate for you. There's people who watch this live stream, who've been watching it for years, and they don't buy anything, but they always show up. Helps the algorithm. They spread good word. They think I'm a good guy. Whatever it might be. You can't really lose if you're decent to people, because even if they don't buy outright, it's not a problem. It's not something that you've lost. And this is actually a really good point to dwell on for a sec, because when it comes to converting leads, you've got to understand that if someone doesn't convert, you mustn't make the mistake of going, oh, well, no worries, thanks so much then, and leaving it. Because what you're suddenly saying to that person is, I was only interested in the deal. And whilst that may be true, and you might both kind of know that, it feels ridiculous then, because you're like, wow, you really went cold on me as a prospect. You really went cold on me the moment I said, no, not right now. This happened to me the other day, which is why I'm bringing it up. We got into a really good conversation. That person did a really good start, and they went, hey, by the way, and they try and solve me. And I just said, do you know what? I'm all right for now, actually. Thanks so much. No worries, or something like, oh, well, never mind, thanks so much. And that was it. I was like, oh, right, okay, so our conversation is dead now. The connection, the relationship is dead, is it? Because I've not bought your thing right now. And I get it. There's only so much time in the world, but you don't know how much cloud time I have. You don't know how much, if you do this to someone, it might be that they're like, wow, that person went cold, and now they're not going to check you out anymore. So sure, you want to draw the conversation maybe to a slight close, but at the same time, you want to keep it open, because you never know what will come out of that. And if you're good and decent to people, they will probably stick around a bit. They may not buy, but suddenly they're sharing. Suddenly they're really intrigued by you. And actually, suddenly they're starting to share stuff about you and write about you and things like that. And that's worth a lot. So that reputation is huge, really matters. Zach has a really good point here on Instagram. Going cold is as bad as badgering the prospect. I think you're right, man. I really do. And I think when you're being all warm and lovey-dovey, if you're doing it right and someone's really, paying attention to you and really into you, but it's not quite right now, and they decide not to do it, not to buy, not to convert, and you're like, oh, okay, never mind, and you go off. And it's like, wow, now the trust has gone completely from the relationship. Now they're not going to really feel good about people who do that, have that kind of conversation with them. You've just killed yourself, because it might be that in 2 months' time they say yes. There's no chance of that now, because they know that you were trying to gain them. Okay, it's a really good point there. A couple of comments here on Facebook. I said, look, Isabella, nice to see you on here. I've had that happen many times. Sometimes with my leads, I've met them at events. 6 months later, I'd convert them. With some of my clients, I'd repeat business. Absolutely. So this is the idea of it taking longer sometimes. Look, some people will convert in 5 minutes, genuinely, and then some people will take a year. It's a case of how much can you hold your breath for? And when you've got enough money to live, you can enjoy the process of keeping everyone warm and doing good stuff for all of them. They will come in eventually. And over time, that all adds up, you know. It's peaks and troughs or ebb and flow or whatever it's called. But after a while, what happens is that every day or every week at least, something comes in because there's things out there. It's called pipeline, you know, and getting these prospects warm mean that people will convert. And Isabella's added, you never know when a prospect can warm up. Could be a week later, a month later, a year later, just as you mentioned, they warm up later. Absolutely. That's because it just might not be the right time for them. That doesn't mean that that person takes longer. It means that right now they're going to take longer. If someone's just spent all their money, they feel in a different place if they have a load. Ever think about someone who's just, you know, got their paycheck? When people get their paycheck, hello, Erica, nice to see you. They instantly feel flush. People are spending at the end of the month. That's why if you think about when people do sales and things like that, they do it when people have money. At the end of the month before they get paid, people are broke, not spending anything. So that same person a week later might feel better. You just got to get them at the right time, and you don't know when it is. So that's why it's important, as Karen just added here, to always keep open communication. Quite right. Any questions on converting leads, do let me know. But let's go on to the next one here. Roger Wilkerson. I think it'd be great if you could explain how to weed out a lead from a mistake that got into pipeline. Yeah, I think I've had these before. I've had ones where people are like, you know what, let's hop on a call, see if you can help my business. And one thing that stands out, I mean, there's lots of things we could add here, but one thing that stands out, Roger, is the idea of qualifying questions. And one that really worked for me, this is when I was doing consulting, so it might be something slightly different for you, is a qualifying question around spend in the past. And if I want someone to spend thousands of dollars with me in a month, I need to know whether or not that kind of person has that propensity towards spending thousands of dollars per month, for instance. So I remember once asking a guy, you know, we were talking about kind of investing in themselves. I said, I mean, out of interest, have you ever, you know, some people think it's ridiculous. They never invest in themselves. Some people think it is. There's no wrong or right. It's what feels right for you. I mean, what about you? Have you spent any money, you know, on yourself in the last year? And I remember the guy said, Richard, I've not even bought a book for myself. And I was like, wow, so this guy is not naturalized to spending. It's the same as the Holy Five, which is like the top 5 countries for, you know, trust in spending with their credit cards online. So the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK are like known as the big 5 that do that. And some places culturally or otherwise just don't do certain things. And that's the case here. Then on the flip side, I've had someone once who was bragging to me about how they spent over $30,000 in the past year on courses and master classes and things like that. And you know then that person's much more inclined to want to spend money. So it was absolutely a lot more kind of relevant to me then. So those qualifying leads, those qualifying questions help out a lot. If your online conversion is more of an automated one, I definitely love the idea of things like a type form. You know, it's the idea of you answering questions. Jumping through lots of hoops may seem like a turn off to people, but that's the point. The point is that if you make people go through a number of processes, then that will sort the men from the boys, as they call it, or the wheat from the chaff. You end up in a place where only those who are genuinely interested went to the end actually end up being the relevant ones you can sell to. And actually, they were probably the ones that would have bought anyway. That's why I ask for things at the end of value content. So for instance, if there's a video of 2 or 3 minutes, at the very end will be a card saying, if you're interested in more, go here, or whatever it might be. The call to action is at the end. And a lot of people have asked me in the past, like, why do it that way? Because so many people, you know, don't watch the whole video, Richard. Surely people are going to kind of lose interest by that point. But that's the point. Those that have lost interest by then weren't going to convert, or very unlikely to. Those that stay to the end are the ones who are going to convert. So they earn the ask. Those that didn't get that far didn't need an ask. And it's so why piss them off with one anyway? Do you see what I mean? So that's the way I work on it. So, but Michael, thank you very much for watching. Can't stay, but watch the replay later this evening. Lovely stuff. So let's go on to the next question. David Potts, thanks very much for watching. I think you're live on Facebook with us right now. Admittedly, I missed the vote. There's no problem at all. But I'll throw a question in the bottom of the pile. Do you have any repeatable, tried and tested maneuvers for getting past gatekeepers and non-decision makers, or maybe just a quick discussion on determining who the decision maker is in each case and how to get in front of them? I'm going to do this in reverse order. The answer is yes. This is the kind of stuff I coach a lot of. And my first job was pitching CEOs web marketing in like 2002, 2003. So there was the world of the decision maker, but also getting to them was the gatekeeper kind of thing. And often non-decision makers in a case of like, we're not going to let you speak to our CEO of our multi-million-pound business, Richard, because it's a web marketing proposition. You need to speak to our marketing team. So there's a lot of working around that. And so I'll do it in reverse order because I can absolutely answer these for you. The first point, or the second one rather, was about determining who the decision maker is. My rule was always speak to the very top person, the CEO or the president, or here in the UK, the managing director, unless it's more than a $50 million business or £50 million business. In my case, I worked. It's stunning how you can get to those people. It's a bit harder, but they are the ones who go, yeah, let's do this. I want it. Let's go. And it's fascinating because every person who coaches sales thinks they know what they're doing. I get it. But there was someone, I won't say who they were or what platform it was on, someone recently was posting advice on how to speak to decision makers. But what they were actually talking about was how to groom the person you were pitching so that when they go internally, I think they were talking about how to pitch marketing managers so that when they go internally to sell the board or to sell the managing director or to sell the CEO, that person would be equipped to do it. And I was like, but that's just wrong, in my opinion. In my opinion, why are you coaching someone further down the food chain to go and sell someone higher up? That is literally the same as me knocking on someone's door trying to sell Sky television packages or whatever you have, and pitching the 7-year-old boy and saying, now, when you speak to your mum, make sure you say these things as well. You should just pitch the mum. It's as simple as that. She's the one who owns the money. Simple. So what I would always do is choose my pain. Do you want to stay broke and have a lot of people give you a no because they weren't able to sell the decision maker, or have a harder time trying to get through to the managing director or CEO or president, but have the guy in front of you go, yeah, like it, let's do it. As simple as that. And then you get your decisions quicker. I know what I prefer, and my clients are always CEO level because I can speak to them directly and say, shall we do this? And they are more visionary as well. This is the thing to remember. They're more visionary, because they're kind of overseeing the whole business. And what can happen is you can talk about broad strokes. And when you give them a big figure, they're not scared by it because their worldview isn't based on budgets. It's based on overlooking the whole company. And that's why if I sell to the top people, I tend to win. If you sell further down, you lose in the main. Okay, of course you can sell to people lower down, but you have to hope it all works out. In terms of determining who the decision maker is, if it's a far larger business, again, seriously, 50 million is big enough that they can always afford anything. But the point is that I would still stick with the CEO till there. Then it gets really hard to get hold of them. So those much bigger businesses, now you're moving towards it being, 9-figure businesses. They're the ones where, sure, you drop down, but I'm not pitching marketing managers ever. I'm still going in at director level. So SVP or an EVP of marketing. Oh, but it's really hard to reach them. Sure. So that's why you have to work harder. And that feeds into your first question, David, which was how do any maneuvers for getting past gatekeepers? Yes. The problem is that what we're trying to do is sell to someone something or engage with someone that doesn't typically do that thing. So selling, for instance, in that instance, 16 years ago, selling web marketing to the CEO of a 18 million quid business it's not that I'm selling as the reason why I don't go through. It's that what I'm asking to do doesn't correlate with the person's job title. If I wanted to speak to the marketing team, they'd put me straight through because it's their job to kind of evaluate these kind of marketing propositions. But CEO's job is more strategic. Like, do we open a branch office over here, or do I kill that product, or do we merge with that business, for instance? So my hack worked almost every time. And it's not some cute line that works past the gatekeeper. What it is understanding the power of human connections. So word of mouth and referral is huge in business, and people buy people, but if they don't know people, they buy people that are connected to people they know. Okay, so for instance, if I needed, which I did in 2010, a carpenter for the flat I owned in London to do my to fit my kitchen, I could have got anyone to fit my kitchen, but I chose my brother-in-law because he is a carpenter that can fit a kitchen. It had to be him because he's a known quantity, right? And so my point is that he got the gig because there was this known thing. I was trusting him, that I was more familiar with him. And if you can build on that, you can then look to the social space. If I go up to someone in the street and say hello, I'll get a funny look because human barriers go up. This is one of the crucial parts of getting your way using your network in selling and in connecting in business. However, if that person and I have a mutual friend, and I know that, I can go up to that person cold who hasn't a clue who I am and say, "Hi, David, you don't know me, but we're both friends with Erica over here." Instantly, the barriers will dissolve, and they're like, "Oh, cool, no problem. So how are you? And like, how do you know them?" And it's the same as with a wedding. You know, you ever go to a wedding and there's people there you don't know. You sit next to them on the table. It's awkward, right? But you just use the thing you've got in common. So how do you know the bride or groom? Oh, I know this. I went to school. Did you? I was at university. Did you know that he did? And you're away. So leveraging a connection you have in common is the way to do it. So that's how I found my leads in the past when I was doing this initial job. I would look to clients we already work with. Then I would see who's partnered with them, worked with them, sold to them, being a customer of theirs, anyone in that kind of ecosystem, and then I'd pitch them. Because now what I can say is, "Hey, you don't know me, but you know Bob." Okay. "Oh, I know Bob really well." Yeah. And I would be able to pitch them, no problem. So how do you use this with a gatekeeper? It's very simple, David. All you do is you say, "Hi, I need to speak to John about the work I'm doing with Bob." It's about Bob Jones or whatever. And the receptionist doesn't have a clue who you are, but they simply would say to their manager, you know, because they have to speak to them before they put you through. "Oh, someone on the line here, I don't know, someone called Richard Moore, something about this guy Bob Jones." "Oh yeah, I know him. Yeah, put him through." So he doesn't know who I am, but by proxy, because of the mutual contact, I've been validated. It's as simple as that. So going back to my brother-in-law as a carpenter, I then would recommend him to someone else. And they'd say, you know, they'd be thinking, "But I don't know who the hell this person is." But the moment you say, "Oh yeah, he's my brother-in-law," "Oh, fine, well, I'll use him then." The guy I've got 2 of our 4 bathrooms are about to be worked on in this house. And the person who's going to do it did my father-in-law's house. So he's a known quantity. He gets the gig. At the very least, we spoke to him. He is like the easiest lead for him to convert because we're ready to go. Do you see what I mean? That's how you do it. So the way I describe it is work virus-like. When you're manually going for leads, who have you worked with already? Who's the next person over from them? Because they'll know of you from your friend. And if they don't, you can leverage your friend. The reason why this is working so well is that if you mention someone you have as a mutual connection, you will now be in a place where you're leveraging their human curiosity, which is very powerful. They will want to lean in. So what is it you're doing with them then? And you go from there. Okay. So people use testimonials to kind of create a sense that they're a decent person and done a good job. But testimonials can be used to leverage against the people who know that person who gave the testimonial. Okay, so you grow out that way. That's how you get past gatekeepers. That works every day. And I would always say if I needed to get past gatekeepers, it's not so much something I do these days, but if I did, I would always look for a mutual connection that lets me through no problem. So hopefully that helps. And David, absolutely, all this builds off your natural tendency to treat everyone decently. Presupposing you do that, it means everyone wants to kind of talk to you a bit more, but that curiosity element is absolutely huge. Great question. Let's go on. So Bernadette Judd, just 3 questions this week, not the 72 as it was last week or whatever. How to talk a customer out of buying if you know they're going to be a troublemaker for you. Firstly, your qualification questions, like with Roger's question earlier, make sure you're qualifying them effectively so this doesn't happen in the first place. But when you do have people who are clearly going to be a troublemaker, sometimes just be honest with them and just say, do you know what, John, it just feels like this actually isn't going to be a good fit. Because a good deal, by the way, is one where, it sounds cute, but it's true, is one where they win, but also you do as well. And the alternative, if you don't want to do the hard no, and I don't think it's going to work, is you can just put a little thing in like, do you know what? I've just looked at this and I just want to be honest with you. I don't think I'm going to have the bandwidth to work with you. And I just want to be upfront right now. Okay. I'm really sorry. And you're not saying because I think you're going to be a troublemaker, but what you are saying is like, I don't think I've got the capacity to do that. So maybe that's one way around it. Another way to do it is to say something like, to kind of add more hoops they'd have to jump through, or qualification stuff, and say, actually, do you know what? You don't meet the criteria. Let me sort you out with someone else. We want to give them value anyway. I've plenty of time recommended people go and speak with someone else because actually I'm like, there's no way I can look after this person. I know someone else I can, and I'll bang them over the lead. Plus, it helps your relationship elsewhere as well. But passing on sometimes is a better idea because it might be somebody who's more applicable for them than you are. Neos Martinez, thanks for the question on Instagram. I've heard of this myth that family friends aren't the best startup partners. Is that true? Depends on family friends, right? But I personally believe that it's better to keep things a little bit separate. The first instance I had of this potentially happening was many years ago, and there was someone close to me who we were potentially going to work together, and it was like, do you know what? I'm just going to not and see how it goes for a bit, because you've got to give even your friend or family, everyone gets very excited about it. Oh, work together, how great would it be? But actually you need to be, give yourself a bit of a probation. And I remember saying, look, do you know what, man? I mean, I think we should work together, be really good fun, but let's just see how we go for a bit first. Let's not kind of tie the knot officially yet and see how it goes. And then after a while, I was like, this is not going to work. And often it doesn't, because you know too much about each other and you want to kind of get in each other's pockets a bit. Sometimes it can work. The way to do it right, and it's the same, not just for family, friends, but for anyone, you've got to respect each other's space and respect each other's strengths. You do your thing, I do mine. Sometimes there's overlap, but it's healthy to not kind of get in each other's way. My wife and I are technically directors of a business we own together, but we totally don't overlap on some of the stuff we cover. And the reason why is because she does her thing, I do my thing. We don't, it wouldn't work on certain levels. She has a certain mindset on certain things. I have a different one, and it's just not a good idea. Plus, the most important thing to me, knowing that business can be stressful at times, but the most important thing to me is great relationships, especially with friends and family. I don't want to jeopardize that unless it's like, wow, we have got to work together. There's so much strength here, doing our own things. Otherwise, I would leave it alone. There's plenty of people out there you could work with instead. So hopefully that helps. It's a really good question, Niels. Michelle Raymond, thanks for joining us on Facebook. Great to see everyone here. We're talking about converting leads. So any questions you have, do ask them here. Let's do another one there from Bernadette Judd. What causes things like it's too expensive when you know your offer is competitively priced? I kind of mentioned this earlier, Bernadette. If someone says, oh, that's a bit expensive, what they mean is that the value you've offered, so the sense of what they're getting in return for their money, is not correlating with the amount of money you're asking for. Basically, they don't feel there's enough value. When someone asks for a lower price or thinks it's too expensive, they're typically saying there's not enough difference here between this and anything else. And so what they're doing is they're creating the differentiation. You know what, yours is just, it feels like every other product I see, or I can't really, it just looks like I'm not going to get much in return. What they're doing is they're saying, do you know what, let's create a difference. Let's just make yours way cheaper instead. But typically speaking, it's less that. It's much more likely that you're not positioned and or giving value on a level that meets the amount of money you're asking for. It should always be, there's the sense that there's far more value than the price point suggests, okay? Not parity, because then it becomes difficult to decide if you should do it or not. You don't, and there's a huge difference between someone buying, going, okay then, and someone going, wow, I really want that thing. So when the value doesn't meet what's being offered, what's been asked for in terms of price point, it's so important to recognize that you're not giving them enough, or a sense that they're not getting enough. But remember that point I just mentioned, that it's also about positioning. You could be giving them a Ferrari for 2,000 quid and they still think it's not right because there's something amiss. It's maybe a perception or something like that. In fact, I had exact experience without the Ferrari, which was about 4 years ago. I was going to buy a car, and the car looked perfect online. The photos, that it was a really new car. It was the highest spec of what it was. And I remember, and like the price point was good, like really good as well. And I remember I met the guy, and he had it parked in the middle of a car park, a public car park, just this car. I'm like, it just doesn't feel right. And so it was something that it started worrying me, because there's this random bloke suddenly, all people who are selling stuff often are random, but this guy felt now I was tuned into everything that was wrong about it. Do you see what I mean? So it's important to think about your positioning and the perception of you as a platform for the perception of your offering as well. So if something like it's too expensive comes up, think also, like I said earlier, about the backdrop of what expensive really is, or something like that. I would also add that the perception of your product as premium, if you are going to go for a higher price point, sometimes doesn't get pulled off well enough if your price point is higher but not high enough. Sometimes you actually need to ask for way more to make the point that you're premium. And so there's two examples of this. So there's a company I've worked with where their product is far, far superior than the competitors, as in it's a different ballgame. We're comparing, Toyota and Lamborghini here, but they know they're in the same general game. So they're overlooking that they're premium, and they're pricing themselves as a bit more expensive, but in the same box as them. Ferrari or Lamborghini don't do that. They're like, we're a 200 grand car, that's a 20 grand car. It makes a huge difference. And it's like, well, we're not even going to consider it otherwise. This is far more premium. And what I found is, by asking for like 4 times the amount of money, people get it now. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, now I want to buy it. And it just it wasn't right before. It didn't feel right that the price point was a bit expensive, but compared with others, but actually didn't correlate with what was really on offer. And I did this when I had my Taekwondo schools a few years back. When I rolled them out, I made them far more expensive, not a bit, or technically the most expensive, but far more expensive. And the better word is far higher price point than any other martial arts schools, because I was like, you're getting so much more. You're not getting a martial arts lesson. You're getting a 4th degree black belt. You're getting someone who medaled European and national, and so on. And it's like, you're getting the premium. And so you really want to pay for it. And I was making it almost exclusive to be in the club, and that made a huge difference. So it's usually something like that. Bernadette, we should talk more. So DM me if there's a particular point on there. Michelle, you've had hi Maria and Michelle, and also thanks Daniel for Team Live Phoenix. Michelle's asked, not sure if you've covered this, but do you typically sell the pain of your prospect rather than create the happy place? And does this help you sell better? Well, when I had well, in fact, the event that you were at, Michelle, when you spoke a few weeks ago at Entrepreneur Business Live in London, we had Nir Ayal in, and of course he was saying that the science shows that it's all about pain. Now, I'm not too blatant about it. I bring up the pain point, but what I do when I close someone is I sell them on, oh my God, I really like Richard. He's really warm and cuddly. He's the kind of person I want to work with. All that kind of emotional. My God, this guy. I just feel comfortable. I feel like this guy's got this. He's got my back. And if I give him the money, we're going to get results. It's just that belief in me is what I really close people on. And the product, obviously I do a good job when I deliver, but the product is a device. People are really buying me. That's why consultancy is great if you get it right, because people are like, it's got to be Richard. We want you in. And there's a talk I'm doing next week. There's like 250 people in this company. And I went, it has to be you. We need you to come and talk to us all about kind of attitude or whatever, which is crazy because I'm not really a kind of not motivational speaker really, but it'd be interesting to do. But the point is they're picking you. That's the way it should be. I do think that that there's if I look at this question again, you can bring up the pain point, but you don't want to stir it too much. But it is worth sharing someone's sense of or rather what the implication might be if they don't fix things. And look, the bottom line is that we are hardwired to prefer fixing or avoiding pain than chasing or experiencing success or good feeling. So it creates greater leverage if you can show that. But you don't want to do it in such a way that you're really twisting the knife. Otherwise, you might make people feel quite bad. Plus, be careful, because in 2019, we've all been aggressively marketed to. And so this whole FOMO thing that you see a lot of online, the idea of missing out. You see a lot of classic sales funnels or on ads and things like that. We're all conditioned against it now. It doesn't work nearly as well because the majority of people have seen it all before. So you have to be careful about over-egging the pain point, if you see what I mean. That's important to do. Speaking of funnels, hello to Marielle Leguer over on Instagram. I know you're at Nashville over in the US for the ClickFunnels conference. I hope you're having a good time there. That's important. David Potts, what's your elevator pitch, Richard? And what would it cost for you to come in for 4 hours and interact with my team? Hypothetical. We can talk about that on a DM, David. But the elevator pitch for anyone should very much be focused on the thing on the opposite of the thing that you think you should talk about. Most people's elevator pitch is, I'm amazing, I'm this, buy my product because of this and this and this and this. These are features, this is how it works. Instead, what it should be is, here are wins for you. Here's how I've worked with this person, or here's how this person has won, made money, saved time, saved money, looked good, generated market share. Share the wins for people. In an elevator pitch, you need to get to the point. The punchline is how they win, not how your product works. There's a huge, huge difference. That's the way to look at it. So if that helps a bit, that's the way I would look at it. Matan Gockman, hello to you as well. Nice to see you on here. Let's do 2 more questions. So Falguni Katira has asked, when you take the informative approach on the top of a funnel, what is the right time in the customer journey to start talking products and sale without making them feel they're being taken on a ride, especially when it comes to non-tangible product benefits such as a seminar? Well, there's no right time. There's no right time to shift to talking about products. Thank you very much, Risha. It's very kind of you on Instagram. You sound very intelligent. Keep it up. Keep it up sounding intelligent. Okay, it's fine. So Falconi, there's no right time to convert someone, but there is a pointer or a cue, as I call it, that you do get from a prospect or a lead. And that cue is a compliment. So if you're looking at, and this is what most people are after, like, how do I know when to ask for someone? Something. When I'm in a conversation with someone, when I'm on a phone call, when I'm in messaging or whatever it is, how do I know when to ask? It's when you've earned the right. And you can see that when someone gives you a compliment. And that compliment is usually something as simple as, oh, wow, that's really changed my view on things. Or, thank you so much. I never looked at it that way. Or, that's been really useful. Thank you. Some kind of compliment or positivity in your direction is a moment, you need to capitalize on it, is a moment where they're like, I owe you. Okay. Carla, hello. Manifesting Concealed, hello as well. Lots of you on Instagram. And what happens is that's the moment where you can say to them, okay, thank you. And I'm sure I can help more. And then you ask, have you seen this thing, by the way? Have you checked this out? Would you like to hop on a call? Whatever it might be. You move to your ask. Those that are nervous should look for the second compliment. If you can do two, I mean, this is the person effectively saying, come on, like, you can ask me now. Do you see what I mean? So that's the way I would look at it. I think we're going to finish over on Instagram because you only get like whatever it is, an hour or so. So we're going to finish there. But thanks so much for following. And I'm going to finish over on Facebook actually as well. But join me in the Entrepreneur Business Group right now. I will switch right over and we will go live to discuss the winner of the competition on who will win a copy of Jonah Berger's book Contagious. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks on YouTube as well and on the podcast. See you soon.